Humanity Matters.
Hello, and welcome to HMTV. I'm your host, Bernie Furshpan of Ordinary Heroes. I have had some incredible heroes on my series. Today I have an extraordinary hero, somebody who's spearheading an incredible mission, a wonderful mission, B'nai B'rith International. Located in Washington, D.C., I have with me today Mr. Dan Mariaschin. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Dan, how are you?
Good, Bernie. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. And I really were so appreciative of all the good work that you and your organization does.
Well, thank you for that. We actually are doing some incredible things here. We find that the work we do is impactful. We're educating young people. 30,000 people come through our doors every year. And today's youth need that education, that formal education on the Holocaust, the lessons of the Holocaust that we seem to keep repeating. And it's got to stick sooner or later. That's why we keep talking about it. And the teachers, educators, superintendents, and principals come back to us saying it really did move their kids. They've become more empathetic, more tolerant towards each other, and so it seems to be working. So we got to keep fighting the good fight, as they say.
Well, we are a 182-year-old organization. We were founded in 1843 in New York City by a group of German Jewish immigrants. You know, a lot of us think that about the Lower East Side in kind of an 1898 way. But in the 1840s, it was very Jewish. A lot of the immigrants came from Germany. And the story goes that these 11 or 12 members of a community, they were part of the German Jewish community. Someone came to them with a story that there was an indigent widow who needed some help, and they raised the grand sum of $27. You know, if you were to compute it by inflation, I don't know what it would have been in terms of the purchasing power, but it was a grand gesture by these gentlemen who were in different professions in New York City, and they bonded over this mission of volunteerism, of working in the community, of helping those in need. Mm-hmm. And it grew from that in 1843 to where we are today, where we have members in dozens of countries around the world, thousands of members. But the mission has changed a little bit over the years, but it's still pretty much trying to help those in need. And then, of course, advancing human rights, advancing civil rights, working to support the state of Israel, to fight anti-Semitism. All of this is part of our mission today.
It's a beautiful mission, and you have a great reputation. Now, you've been drawn to this mission. At first, I'm assuming there was some interest in getting involved with B'nai B'rith. What drew you to the mission of B'nai B'rith? If you can tell us how you first got involved.
Well, it really starts at the dinner table in our home. I was raised in New Hampshire, and we didn't have a large Jewish community, but around the table we talked a lot about Jewish life, Jewish history, Jewish culture, Jewish religion. And it was that those discussions at the table with my mother and father, my sisters, that gave me the idea that maybe entering a life of service in the Jewish community was where I wanted to be. And I went to graduate school at Brandeis, and my MA was in contemporary Jewish studies. And I stayed in Boston. And I went to work for the JCRC, the Jewish Community Relations Council in Boston. And as part of my work, I was kind of the liaison to B'nai B'rith in Boston. Mm-hmm. And they would send me to give speeches all over New England. I go to Rhode Island, go to New Hampshire, went up to Maine, I went Western Massachusetts. And I came to know B'nai B'rith as this very important volunteer organization that was making a difference in the community. And that led me to appreciate all of the work that it did. Then I worked for several other Jewish organizations in my career. Worked for the Anti-Defamation League for 8.5 years in New York. And then came back to B'nai B'rith 37 years ago, and 29 years ago became the CEO. So I feel like I am a steward of this great legacy of an organization that I believe has done so much good for the Jews in this country and Jews around the world, and in fostering a world that appreciates, understands, and values human rights and civil rights.
Well said. And thank you for your service for so many decades with B'nai B'rith. So it's an honor to know you and to meet you. And I'm sure you've got a lot of projects going on right now, a lot of initiatives. Is there anything that you're really excited about today?
There is. This week, our office in Brussels, which is, the capital of the European Union, our office in Brussels issued a new report on anti-Semitism on college and university campuses in Europe. Mm-hmm. We're very familiar with the situation here at Columbia and Harvard and NYU and other universities around the country. We've been through this now almost every day for 2 years. But Europe has a similar situation. And in Europe, there are fewer Jewish students because the Jewish population is less. And so Jewish students there feel very vulnerable. And this report was just issued as we're talking. It just came out a couple of days ago. We've already received a great deal of feedback on it. People who have welcomed this report, which is about 100 pages, which outlines the problem, the reasons why, how we can combat this. And I'm very proud of that. And that was just this week. Bernie, the fight against anti-Semitism, unfortunately, it's not the work of a day, and it's really not the work of a single organization or a single individual. It's when we all are working together that it is it's going to succeed. This battle is going to succeed, and I believe it will. And so everybody makes their contribution, and what we did a couple of days ago, I think, was an important one.
Fabulous. Let me ask you, in comparison, that report that Brussels came out with, how does it compare to the United States colleges?
Well, it's similar in certain ways. I mean, the intimidation of students, the bullying of students, I will call it the loud voices of those who wind up being apologists for Hamas, who wind up being driving a Palestinian narrative which is genocidal. That affects the students everywhere. And so to compare, it's the same kinds of things. Faculty, courses, all of that, college administrators, some of this indifference, some of this apathy, some of it is intentional, some of it is unintentional. There are many similarities. Once you get into that 4-year period of where a student is at a university, you put it under the microscope, a lot of similarities.
I had a suspicion that there were. I think this is a global issue. I think the Jews around the world are collectively being punished. And I know that what you're doing is definitely having an impact. What we're doing is having an impact locally. There's a lot of effective strategies. Education is effective for us. What are some of the strategies that you're using to combat hate crimes, to promote interfaith understanding? What would you say is effective in terms of dealing with anti-Semitism or intolerance?
We have a perfect storm. Term is often used, maybe overused sometimes, but I'm going to use it. We have a perfect storm of anti-Semitism, and that's what makes this period different than, say, earlier periods. And now, of course, I'm not talking about 1939 to 45. I'm not talking about pre-1939 elsewhere in the world, or right here in the United States. But in recent decades, we seem to have been making some progress. I think that the perfect storm involves several elements. Social media, this instantaneous, you put a lie out, and the next thing you know, if you're an influencer putting a lie out, all of a sudden you've got 300,000 or 400,000 people who are believing the lie. So we've got social media, we've got campus anti-Semitism relating to faculty, coursework, and students who are out there intimidating and bullying. At the United Nations, B'nai B'rith has been accredited at the UN from the very, very beginning. We were present in San Francisco in 1945 when the UN was founded, and then when the UN opened in Lake Success, and early on, 1947, B'nai B'rith received its first official NGO credentials, non-governmental organization credentials at the UN. So we've been at the UN almost from the very, very beginning. The UN is another nest of anti-Israel, anti-Semitic rhetoric. And you would think an organization that was founded to fight that, to advance human rights, to promote mutual respect, to work against all wars and all of these things, you would think that would be the mission that rules their day-to-day activity. It doesn't, because when it comes to Israel, it's a situation where every day Israel is being criticized for one thing or another. And then look, there's also, the media, the mainstream media, which parrots a lot of these things. And let's take this so-called genocide charge as an example. Now, the work that you do is to tell the story in terms of Holocaust remembrance, Holocaust education, the lessons of the Holocaust. This is extremely important. Okay, 80 years have passed, but that doesn't make the need to do this any less. On the contrary, the need is more, because fewer and fewer of those who actually witnessed and experienced this are living. So the burden falls on those of us who are to tell this story. Then Israel is attacked on October 7th in a genocidal attack. This was a genocidal attack. If Hamas had the ability to move on to Tel Aviv, they were stopped, thank God. Had they moved on to Tel Aviv, they were looking to kill Israelis. They were looking to kill Jews. This is a genocidal ideology. And yet, those who back them, those who are against the state of Israel, and those who are anti-Semitic, in most cases, are talking about, well, you're committing genocide against the Palestinians. Well, genocide, there is an intent. The whole idea, the word is intent. In the Raphael Lemkin definition of genocide, Lemkin was the Polish Jew, lost many in his family during the Shoah, was a lawyer, and he's the one who came up with the word genocide. And in his definition, the word intent is extremely important. There's no intention on the part of Israel to engage in genocide. On the contrary, if it wanted to engage in genocide, the war would have been over in 3 days. It's now lost, as we're talking, 900 soldiers in being careful how it approaches its military activity so as to avoid civilian casualties. Now, it's fighting an asymmetrical enemy. It's fighting an enemy that's in tunnels. It's in mosques. It's in apartment buildings. It's in hospitals, and people are all around. And if you're in a war, the one thing you want to do normally you want to get civilians out of the way. They don't want to get civilians out of the way. The Israelis have tried their best to do that. And yet this genocide lie continues on. And that's part of this perfect storm that I talk about, where one time somebody says something and then it's out there. So what we need to do is we need to answer in social media ourselves. And we do, and other Jewish organizations have their own social media platforms. We need to do, for example, on college campuses, we have a program, it's beginning to grow now, where for students, Jewish and non-Jewish, who want to write about anti-Semitism and how to combat it. In other words, get the young people themselves to start writing and thinking about it. And then finally, one of the things that we do, and I mentioned our activity at the UN, B'nai B'rith is very much involved in public diplomacy. We're here in Washington, D.C., as you noted. We have all the embassies here. We oftentimes meet with ambassadors. We meet with embassy staff. All of these countries that are not taking fighting anti-Semitism seriously, or who at the United Nations are joining with other countries in engaging in what I consider oftentimes to be anti-Semitic activity. So we are talking to the countries themselves, if I can borrow another term, speaking truth to power, to lay this out. I would say finally, Bernie, the most important thing is, as Jews, I believe we have to have self-respect. We're being targeted here unfairly, unjustly, and we have right on our side. There is a difference between good and evil. There is a difference between right and wrong, and we are being wronged, and we have the right on our side. We have the argumentation on our side. And I mean, look at what people are thinking Gaza, but are they thinking also about the great medical and agricultural advancements that have been given to the world by Israeli scientists and by Israeli innovators? I mean, this is the story that we have to tell, and something that we try to do.
There are so many things that Israel shares with the world. It's not that they keep it to themselves. From technology to agricultural to medicine, over the many decades, and even today, there's so many advancements that we share with the world, that Israel shares with the world, and it's almost like, you have a friend and you're always like going out of your way for them, and you give them gifts and things like that, and they take you for granted. They really don't appreciate you, and as soon as somebody attacks you, and you're on the ground, they're kicking you too. And that's what it feels like. It feels like that Israel is being kicked by what used to be allies who so quickly turned against Israel and calling for genocide as well by saying river to the sea. They don't even understand what that means. All they're doing is just parroting. And to me, it's more like obedience. They're just being obedient to their party or to their, it's kind of tribal. It's kind of like tribal mentality. And that's what hurts, because really we're going so much out of our way. Israel's going so much out of their way to prevent anybody from getting hurt. And it's hurtful to us. It really does backfire. The propaganda war, sometimes feels like we're losing the propaganda war because of algorithms. And you said that very clearly about social media. It is a perfect storm. The young people don't really hear our messages because the things that they're listening to, they're getting more of. And that's how algorithms work. They're just only going to see the things that they want to see. And they're going to get more of it, and they're going to believe more of it. It takes seconds to change their mind, to make them believe lies and disinformation.
Absolutely. When I started my career, the anti-Semites, if they wanted to get their message out, some of these organizations, these extremist organizations, it would be through the mail. They would send a tract, or they would send a book, or they would, it moved very slowly.
Very slow.
Today, it's with a keystroke, as they say.
That's what it is.
And it is instantaneous, and we have become, I think, we're living in an age of gullibility, and which is basically to believe everything that comes our way. And I just would add one thing, though. We do have good friends. We shouldn't minimize the fact that we've got good friends. We've got allies. I mentioned, I was raised in New Hampshire, and I go back occasionally. Small Jewish community there. I was raised in a community with 25 Jewish families, and in a 40-mile radius. And I go back, and we had a small business there. We got to know the people locally. I won't say that there wasn't anti-Semitism, but there were a lot of friends. They understood us. They saw us as being proud Jews, that we were proud of who we are, of our history. And there was a connection there. And we have good friends today. However, in the internet age, as we're saying, in the internet age, it is very hard to catch up with a lie. And that's why that's why what used to go out on the mail today, in a minute, it's out there.
Now, it's in seconds, literally. You know, it took Hitler 12 years. 12 years with his propaganda to convince the Germans that his party should be the one that's leading the country. And it included his ideologies, his vitriol, and all of that. And it took 12 years for people to be swayed. Today, it's like they're sailboats. You know, the wind blows this way, they move that way. The wind blows that way, they move that way. They are really, however, you made a very good point, and that is we do have friends. Because my father, and I miss him dearly, you know, may he rest in peace. He suffered greatly. He lost, you know, my entire family. He was in a family of 8 people. He's the only one that survived. He was 10 years old, lived in a forest for 3 years. I don't know how he made it out alive. I tell his story how he did. It's a harrowing story. But he finally made it out, and he became a very generous man because he told me that there were good people out there. Like you said, there are, you know, allies out there. They were good people who rescued him, who saved him, who fed him, but they lost their lives because they did. And so there's a lot more good people, obviously, than bad. There's a lot more good feelings than bad, and good thoughts, even though what's in front of us on social media and in newspaper and legacy media is not always positive for Jewish people and for the nation of Israel and the state of Israel. However, we got to fight the fight, because if we don't stand up to this, you know, it's we're going to lose. It's just that simple. Today, we have the same tools.
I think we just simply need to stand firm and stand up. And as I say, we have right on our side. If I can, Bernie, I'd like to shift a little bit to something that I'm very proud of, because you referenced the Holocaust. My mother and father both had families in Europe. My parents were immigrants to the United States. They were brought in the early part of the 20th century. Had they stayed behind, my mother in Lithuania or my father in Russia, and I know exactly where they were. I visited my mother's shtetl in Lithuania, where she was born and spent the first few years of her life. But the issue that I'm most proud of today that I'm working on is Holocaust-era assets restitution. All of this property, all of these homes, apartments, businesses, not to mention, you know, the insurance and the bank accounts and all of these other things, confiscated overnight in most cases. And one of the things that we do, and B'nai B'rith is a proud original member of the World Jewish Restitution Organization, is to engage countries, and I am negotiating with 2 of those countries now for many years, trying to make sure that there is legislation in these countries that provides an opportunity for these families, and where there are no families left, to have a foundation that takes restitution funds and uses it for the purpose of Jewish education, Holocaust education, et cetera. And it's something that I'm very proud of. And both of us know, you talk about your family, both of us know that just because of the biological clock, there just are fewer and fewer, every day, fewer and fewer survivors in the world who can tell their story, who can point to, you know, the number on their arm, the tattoo on their arm, to say, I was there, I saw it. Because if we don't tell that story, then the Holocaust deniers are going to prevail. They're going to prevail. They're going to say, they do it now. They say it didn't. We exaggerate. It didn't happen. You know, all of those things. So we have a special obligation.
We got to push back even harder. And I think we're slowly but surely learning some things about how to send a message out there clearly, how to educate. We've made a pivot here at the museum. You know, we educate so many people, but we had to pivot a little bit in terms of how we educate and bring it to today's contemporary issues and relevant situations that are going on in the schools, in the governments, in the countries, and what's happening in Israel. We had to bring that to light, to speak the truth and to tell the truth, because like you said, the truth is on our side. And we kind of run out of time. And I'd just like to thank you so much for speaking with me. This was an interesting conversation. Is there something you'd like to add in terms of people participating with B'nai B'rith, and anything else that you'd like to leave? Any parting words?
I would direct those who are interested to our website. It's a great website, and we've worked a lot on it. There's a lot of great information on there about our work, including this report that I mentioned about on the European university campuses. It's bnaibrith.org, one word, no apostrophes, just BNAIBRITH.org. And you'll find out a lot more about our good work here in the United States and globally. And Bernie, thank you so much, really, for having me on today.
It was an absolute pleasure, and we'll spread the message of this particular podcast episode. We've done over 220 episodes just in the last 4 months.
Wow.
It's a relatively new platform, but we're excited about it. We've got a lot of hosts with different series, and I was very excited when I heard that you agreed to participate with us. Daniel Mariaschin, thank you so much for joining me, and for those that are watching or listening, thank you for joining us. Make sure to subscribe and listen to all of our podcasts on HMTV. I'm Bernie Furshpan, your host of Ordinary Heroes. Until next time.